It is the time of Rise and Shine. Welcome to the show. This is Channel Africa, and a very good morning to you on this Tuesday. It's the 2nd of September. Spring is here, and we're springing. We're enjoying the great weather, and we're going to be together for the next 3 hours. My name is Asanda Beda. We are Channel Africa, broadcasting from Johannesburg in our studios live in South Africa, as well as at Channel Africa 1. That's where you can connect with us on YouTube as we are live streaming there. SABC Plus is also where you can connect with us, as well as www.channelafrica.co.za. On the show today, we look at Rwanda accepting 7 people from the US as part of a deportation deal, and Ethiopia tightening its grip on media ahead of the elections coming up in next year, 2026. So those stories and more we'll be looking at. But first, let's start with the news. And we say good morning to Jwalani Tulo Mwepe, and then we'll get a snippet of what's happening in the world of sports from Fikile Lingwati with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda. Good morning. I am Nolutando Buthelezi. Jailed Ugandan opposition figure Kizza Besigye has boycotted the start of his treason trial, accusing the presiding judge of bias. The trial of Besigye and his aide Obed Lutale was supposed to start after months of delays, but both defendants decided to boycott the proceedings after the judge, Emmanuel Baguma, refused to recuse himself. Judiciary spokesperson James Iremye Mawanda said there was no justification for the bias accusations and confirmed that Baguma had refused to recuse himself. Besigye's months-long detention has shone a spotlight on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights record ahead of polls early next year, in which Museveni is seeking re-election. A court in Finland has sentenced a controversial leader of a Nigerian secessionist movement to 6 years in prison after convicting him of terrorism-related offences. In a unanimous verdict handed down by a panel of 3 judges, Simon Ekpa, a Finnish citizen of Nigerian origin, attempted to promote the independence of the so-called Biafra region in southeastern Nigeria by illegal means. Parts of southeastern Nigeria have been hit by instability for years because of the conflict between secessionist movement, the indigenous people of Biafra, and the security forces. South Africa's National Editors Forum, SANEF, has flagged a study from the report by the Committee to Protect Journalists that exposes U.S. President Donald Trump and his administration's attack on the media. The report is based on interviews with nearly 40 journalists, academics, media lawyers, and press freedom advocates. The report also says the Trump administration undermines truth and consensus in the U.S. SANEF Secretary General Glenda Daniels was speaking at the M20 summit in Melrose Arch, Johannesburg.
The so-called democratic world of Donald Trump, because people will tell you we in South Africa can talk and we can exercise our freedom of expression. They can't there. It's authoritarianism. It's the vile kind of hypocrisy that you can possibly imagine. It's a kind of populist tactic. It comes from authoritarianism, that kind of big man figure, where the minute you challenge me, I'm this leader, I'm going to turn the table over onto you. But we see through that. We're not stupid.
South Africa's Department of Social Development in the Northern Cape province has embarked on a training program to educate officials to communicate with deaf people. The announcement was made during the official launch of the Deaf Awareness Month campaign in Kimberley. Head of Department Shweniz Kimiwuki says that the program will be rolled out over the next 3 years.
The Department of Social Development, together with SASA, has made a commitment to ensure that all our frontline workers together with the parents of young children who are hearing impaired, will receive training, and this training will be phased over a period of 3 years to ensure that persons who are hearing impaired, that their stories can be heard. We have allocated resources to the rollout of sign language.
Palestinians in the Israeli-occupied West Bank are experiencing severe water shortages due to increasing attacks on scarce water sources by extremist Jewish settlers. Residents report dry taps in homes and farms without irrigation. In Ramallah, the administrative capital of the Palestinian Authority, residents are now relying on public taps. The United Nations recorded 62 incidents of Jewish settlers vandalizing water wells, pipelines and irrigation networks in the West Bank in the first 6 months of the year. For any news stories that you would like to share with us, send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline, TS Galaxy president is urging other PSL teams to establish women's teams. And Daniil Medvedev and his coach Gilis Chevara have parted ways following his US Open exit. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, after the news on Rise and Shine, we get into the section of the show that we call the Africa Roundup. This is where we bring you a concise update in terms of news that you may have missed from yesterday, as well as a throw forward to what to expect to develop in that news space in this new day. And today with that roundup, we start with Uganda, where jailed Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has boycotted the opening day of his trial in Kampala for treason. The high-profile case has intensified scrutiny on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights practices as he prepares to seek another term in office. Besigye was abducted in Kenya last year and forcibly returned to Uganda. He now faces what supporters insist are trumped-up charges which carry a possible death penalty. Defense lawyers say he does not believe he'll get a fair trial. And then we go overseas to China, where a joint statement from a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which includes China, India and Russia, has opposed trade measures that break World Trade Organization rules. President Xi Jinping told the gathering in Tianjin that the group would challenge what he called bullying behavior and apparent preference, or reference rather, to the tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell reports.
Narendra Modi says to Vladimir Putin, the two of us are standing side by side in these troubled times. They then hold hands with one another and approach Xi Jinping, smiles all round between the three of them, and the symbolism of this will be lost on no one, with China's leader talking up multilateralism at a time when the Trump administration is pursuing this America First policy, whacking tariffs on other countries. Many analysts would say that Donald Trump is playing right into Xi Jinping's hands when you see gatherings like this.
Jailed. An overwhelming majority of the world's leading experts on genocide have concluded that Israel's actions in Gaza met the legal criteria for genocide. 86% of those who voted, among the hundreds of members of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, supported the resolution. Israel's foreign ministry said the statement was entirely based on the campaign of lies by Hamas. Meanwhile, at a conference in Slovenia, President Nataša Pirc-Musar compared Israel's actions to those of Bosnian Serbian forces who carried out a notorious massacre during the Balkan Wars.
The world condemned the Srebrenica genocide and brought its perpetrators to justice. Why then, only 3 decades later, do some politicians tolerate, even defend, the Israel's genocidal policy against Palestinians in Gaza?
Well, now, Venezuela has accused neighboring Guyana of trying to create a war front after it blamed Caracas for an attack on a boat transporting election materials on Sunday. The war of words coincides with voting in Guyana for the next president and National Assembly. Tension between them has forced on the oil-rich region of Essequibo. The BBC's Mimi Swabi has more.
Gunfire was exchanged, but no injuries or damage were recorded. But it just shows the severity and the kind of heightened tension. So much so that Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, held a referendum recently over the issue, sovereignty issue. Is it Venezuela's or is it Guyana's territory? And he has also voted for a governor in the Guyanese territory, just to show how serious they are with this claim, really. And it's not a claim that many other countries prop up or take seriously.
South African political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast has described the Communist Party, SACP's decision to contest the next local government elections independently as the end of the tripartite alliance. The love between historical allies, the African National Congress and the SACP, is on the rocks. Several meetings called to mend relationships, or the relationship following the communist decision to go at it alone in future elections, seemed to have failed. Professor Breakfast says the SACP is repeating what former President Jacob Zuma was expelled for.
Who is going to lead that National Democratic Revolution project if the SACP is going to stand by itself? You can't wear two caps. What is the difference between what they want to do and what Msholozi wanted to do? They suspended Msholozi. I'm not saying that they were at fault, so what are they going to do now? Because then you can't apply double standards, because it's the same thing.
That's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. We'll do this again tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news on Rise and Shine. Coming up, we delve deeper into stories making headlines in the East African region of our continent with our resident analyst.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter?
Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard?
Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126.
And we will call you back.
So you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views.
Share your opinion.
Engage with a community that values your perspective.
Follow us on our social media.
Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za
and get ready to share your views
on Channel Africa,
the African perspective.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
The mother of Amantle Samane, a young girl in Soweto Township, southwest of Johannesburg in South Africa, who was brutally raped and killed by Mozambican national Pete Samiao, says although nothing is going to bring her daughter back, she's happy with the judgment handed down by the High Court in Johannesburg. Judge William Karam handed Samiao with 2 life sentences for the murder and rape of the 6-year-old. Amantle's lifeless body was found in Samao's shack after she went missing in October last year. Orisani Sitole has more on this story.
Community members who had filled the court gallery to capacity clapped when Judge William Karam handed down judgment.
On count 1, the kidnapping of the minor child, you are sentenced to 2 years imprisonment. On count 2, the murder of the minor child, you are sentenced to life imprisonment. On count 3, the rape of the minor child, you are sentenced to life imprisonment. For what it is worth then, the sentences on counts 1, 3 and 4 are to run concurrently with the sentence on count 2. Accordingly, the effective sentence is life imprisonment.
While handing down the sentence, Judge Karam told Simiao that although he's a first-time offender, the crimes he committed deems him unfit to be around the public, and that his conduct has taken South Africa backwards in the fight against violent crimes targeted at women and children. Amandle's emotional mother, Ntombizodwa, has welcomed the sentence and says she hopes it will serve as a deterrent for wannabe offenders.
I don't even know what to say, but as for this sentence, I am happy. I'm very happy. Even though it is not going to bring my child back, I'm very happy. He has been served. I do not want to lie. My daughter will now rest in peace. And I think it's a good example to men who do these evil deeds.
Amantle's death caused a huge public outcry in Orlando, and Sowetans came together in solidarity, where Simia was arrested 2 days later. At first, he pleaded not guilty but later confessed. The NPA's Pinim Jonondwani has welcomed the sentence.
The accused did not plead guilty voluntarily. There is a difference between remorse and regret. The accused was rather feeling sorry for himself rather than feeling guilt and sorry for the crimes that he has committed and how he has affected the family of the little girl. So we are happy with the sentence as the NPA. We continue with our resilience in the fight against violent crimes, especially those committed against vulnerable groups.
Amantle was only 6, and her mother says she was still expecting more. She says the saddest part is that Simiao did not tell the whole story.
Yeah, you're not the question mark because me ke why I entse e pushitswe teng because a ona motho nje o feletseng o tla etsa ntho ele a entse ntse ka question mark le no a ke so thole closure even though a thotse ba mo file a life sentence say too, but a ke so thole closure sharp because ke ne ke batla tseba why I entse ntho ele una fila jwang hana a etsa.
The NPA says it will continue to pursue similar cases until women and children are safe.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
So let's take a look at some of the stories making headlines in the East African region now. Zooming into this region, we speak to journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya, Dennis Beru. Dennis, how are you on this particular Tuesday?
Good morning, Asanda. I'm well. I hope you are doing well in South Africa.
We're doing very well. It's spring, so we happy. I'm happy. I'm not a winter person at all.
Same here in Kenya.
Great. Okay, so today on our East Africa Wrap, we start with the African Union Chair welcoming the signing of the revised electoral framework agreement in Somalia. What does this agreement entail and what has been revised as far as it's concerned?
Thank you so much, Asanda. Of course, the AU chairperson, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, he welcomed the signing on 25th August on the agreement of the revised electoral framework between President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed of the Federal Republic of Somalia and with one political wing, that the Salvation Forum, which is now the Somalia's main opposition alliance. And of course, this is now paving way for the election of the upcoming federal president and the member of parliament of Somalia. Of course, he also called on all the signatories of the agreement with its scrupulous implementation. He also urged all Somali stakeholders to extend full support to the consolidation of his political achievement and resort to dialogues in consensus in case of any revolving or issues arises in the electoral process. Of course, the chairperson also encouraged, the international communities to continue supporting the democratic and state building process in Somalia in accordance with the defined by the Somali institution. Of course, these are very critical moments for Somalia because, of course, you've seen the resurgence of the jihadist groups ahead of the the general election.
What does the nod then from His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf mean in terms of support for Somalia? How should we view that?
Of course, this is the first task that at the at the election level where Mahmoud pledges, unwavering commitment to ensuring that, of course, Somalia will have a free and fair election. Of course, uh, the people of Somalia really need peace and security and stability because this is a country that has had, quite a number of insecurity issues in the recent past. And of course, calling out, all the signatories to the electoral, process is a wake-up call to other leaders from the Horn of Africa to ensure that, of course, they support this process in Somalia, because we want to see a smooth and transparent federal election for president and the members of parliament in Somalia.
In staying with the country, Somalia, Egypt will deploy troops to the country by the end of the year, as you touch on security issues there. And this is part of the African Union showing support to stabilize Somalia. Does the Egyptian military have the adequate training and capacity to ensure that this mission is a success, in your view?
Of course, in my views, Egypt has one of the best, military equipment in Africa, and coming in to support the departing Burundi forces to support the Somalian forces. Of course, the Egyptian contingent will join the African Support and Stabilization Mission in Somalia, the AWSOM, which is backing the Somali government and ensuring that, of course, they are fighting the armed groups and also supporting the long-term peace effort that the African Union through the AWSOM has been putting. Of course, the Somalia's defense minister, he welcomed the completion of a training for the Egyptian military unit designated to take part in the AWSOM, calling it a sign of Egypt, of course, growing commitment to peace, stability in the Horn of Africa region.
Let's go to Mozambique and Rwanda now. They've signed a status of forces agreement in Kigali. What will this mean for Rwandan troops that are in Mozambique?
Thank you so much. Of course, Mozambique and Rwanda are coming up with the status of forces, agreement, the SOFA, on Wednesday in Kigali, Rwanda, establishing the legal framework for the Rwandan troops deployed to support. Of course, we've seen what has been happening in Mozambique, the counter-terrorism operation in Cabo Delgado, and the Office of the President of the Mozambique has really confirmed this. Of course, these are an effort, Asanda, to ensure that, of course, Mozambique is being helped to ensure that they're now countering the terrorism that we've seen, stabilize some of the regions that has a lot of minerals. Of course, we are talking about the Uvilili district, whereby we've seen the jihadist groups that is linked to the Al-Qaeda and the Somalis, Al-Shabaab, have been terrorizing and killing, targeting military officers and also the civilian. And the agreement that has been signed between the two countries, we will see now the full cooperation in ensuring that, of course, they bring that aspect of peace, stability in the oil-rich region.
Also staying with Rwanda, the country has accepted 7 people from the U.S. as part of a deportation deal. Recently in the news, we know that similar moves were made by Eswatini as well as South Sudan. But how does this relate to security issues on the continent, and what kind of power does it yield for these host countries in terms of negotiations on other issues with the U.S.?
Yeah, of course, Sanda, the 7 deportees that Rwanda has accepted is part of 250 deportees that Rwanda agreed to accept from the Trump administration. Of course, you've mentioned that some of the countries that really wanted part of this agreement is South Sudan and Eswatini. And of course, this is a part of the agreement that Rwanda signed a lucrative deal in 2022 to accept migrants from Britain, only for the agreement to be scrapped with labor power. And you see, Asanda, now Kigali agreeing to the Washington because, of course, we've seen the Rwandan family has experienced the hardship of displacement, and you've seen the Rwanda activist who was tasked for, who said, he want to be mentioned that, of course, this is the pressure that has been mounted to Rwanda to ensure that, of course, they accept this deal from the U.S. government. And of course, we've seen the peace talks between the DR Congo and Rwanda for the backing, the M23 is part of this conversation because, of course, let us give you the deportees so that now we can now ease those the sanctions because of course you are backing a rebel group in DRC. So this is just part of ensuring that, of course, Rwanda is now singing to the tune of Trump administration. And of course, out of the 7, we have seen some of them agreeing to stay, and some have decided to go back to their origin countries. And we are going to see more development on the same because we expect more deportees to Kigali.
Let's move to Uganda now, where jailed Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has boycotted the start of his treason trial that began yesterday. He is accusing the judge of bias. Given the reputation of the country on its failing human rights, is this hard to believe that the judge would have bias?
Of course, Asanda, from Besigye's side, they believe that Judge Baguma is biased because Besigye has been in detention for over 10 months now. And of course, together with his aide, Obeda Lutaren, the trial was supposed to start on Monday, but the defendant decided to boycott proceeding after Judge Baguma Emmanuel refused to recuse himself. And the attorney, Ronnie Kizza, told reporters, of course, refusing to give Besigye a bail is part of what is seen as a biased and Besigye's team believes that Judge Emmanuel Bakuma should not be part of this process because that is his constitutional right to be released on bail. And we are going to see a very unique development on this because elections are now coming up in Uganda, and the current president, Yoweri Museveni, who is 80-year-old, is seeking another re-election. And of course, people believe that this could be a strategy to ensure that he wins smoothly.
All right, we'll leave it on that note for today. Dennis, it's always great having these catch-up sessions with you, and you must have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much.
Great. And then that story, it remains to be seen if the judge could be recused. Is that something that's possible? We don't know. We'll be following that story as well as the others that we covered on our East Africa Wrap. Dennis Beru is a journalist and team leader at Grassroots Journalism Kenya. He is our resident analyst for the East African region on Tuesdays. It's time now for our news headlines, 6:30 Central African time. Let's say good morning to Noluthando Buthelezi again.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
A landslide that destroyed a village in Western Sudan's region has left at least 1,000 people dead. South Africa's National Editors Forum has flagged a study from the report by the Committee to Protect Journalists that expose U.S. President Donald Trump in his administration's attack on the media. And Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to hold a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in Beijing. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with our first full update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And in this hour, we begin with football news. Tim Sugas, president of South African Football Club, TS Galaxy, has urged other PSL clubs to put effort into establishing women's teams. Sugas' TS Galaxy Queens and Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies, the two teams at the top of the Hollywood Bet Super League table, are the only two affiliated to clubs in the Men's Professional League. CAF, the Confederation of African Football, introduced a new regulation 3 seasons ago which requires all clubs participating in their inter-club competitions to have an active women's team in a league sanctioned by their respective football associations in accordance with their articles. Sugazi says many of the clubs have found a way around the rules and don't necessarily adhere to them.
Obviously, I think clubs have found a way to circumvent the rules, those CAF rules, for sure, no doubt about it. Look at who's playing in CAF, year in, year out. Do they have women's teams clubs? No. The answer is no. But did they qualify? How do they pass the CAF licensing? You know, you end up having a TUT Matantanza. What's that? You need a Super Sport United. If they play in CAF, they must have a Super Sport United. I'm making an example, you know, women's team, not a TUT Matantanza. This is not a box-ticking exercise. So that needs to change. So CAF have to relook into these rules that are being circumvented in one way or another.
Meanwhile, Sugas' team moved to within 1 point of Sundowns following their 2-0 win over the University of Johannesburg yesterday. And although there's still a long way to go until the end of the season, he believes they have what it takes to dethrone the champions this season.
If you watch the game today, a very tough one. You watched our game last week, JWV, you know, you can truly attest to the real fact that our girls are champions in the making. I have no doubt in my mind. Yes, there's still a lot of games to go, but if they continue with this kind of level of application, there's nothing that's going to stop them. You know, there's a lot of good things happening here.
Still with football news, Bafana's next World Cup opponents, Lesotho, have named 5 players based in South Africa for their Friday clash in Bloemfontein, plus their trip to West Africa to take on Benin next week. A 24-man squad picked by coach Leslie Notsi is headlined by former South African under-23 defender Thabo Makhele, who switched his international allegiance 2 years ago, as well as 34-year-old veteran midfielder Tshwarelo Bereng, now playing in the Motsepe Foundation Championship at Uppington City, but previously on the books of Moroka Swallows, Shippo United and Black Leopards. Orbit College goalkeeper Sekhuane Muerane is expected to be first choice. And in cricket news, England's all-time leading wicket-taker James Anderson has entered the auction for the SA20 as he looks to continue his franchise cricket adventures. The 43-year-old was picked as a wild card by Manchester Originals for this year's 100th, but has been unsuccessful in earning contracts in the Indian Premier League and Australia's Big Bash. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The US is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
And now let's find out what's happening in the world of business as we say good morning to Tabiso Lihuku. He's got the update for us.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. There are growing fears about what would happen if South Africa lost access to the global SWIFT payment system. SWIFT is the backbone of international trade, allowing South African banks to move money across the borders. Losing access would choke off capital flows, trigger the rand collapse, and drive up the cost of living. Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund, Zwelakhe Mnguni, says while the risk is low, the consequences would be catastrophic.
The rand would depreciate severely. It would trigger sharp depreciation, and there'll be a lot of volatility. And then that would blow inflation out as well. And that would force interest rate hikes. The South African rand would probably go easily above 20, if not more. I think the financial services industry would fall apart, to be quite honest. So the banking industry does a lot of cross-border transactions. So that would actually create big problems for the banks.
The South African Department of Mineral and Energy Resources has announced decreases in fuel prices, including a cut of as much as 57 South African cents a litre for diesel. The department says that the petrol price will decline by 4 cents a litre and illuminating paraffin by 49 cents. Spokesperson Robert Maike.
The reasons are as follows: the lower oil prices during the period under review, the rand appreciated slightly on average against the US dollar during the same period.
A Purchasing Managers Index survey shows that South African manufacturing sentiment deteriorated in August, after a short-lived improvement in July, as activity remained subdued and both the domestic and export demand were sluggish. The seasonally adjusted PMI, sponsored by South African bank Absa, fell to 49.5 points in August from 50.8 in July. New sales orders fell sharply, dropping 8.5 points to 47.4 points as respondents referred to tariffs hurting exports, even if they were not directly impacted. African mining industries held a media briefing outlining plans for the mining Indaba scheduled for next year in February, South Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa. The Indaba will highlight transformative power of collaboration in addressing the sector's challenges and opportunities. Product Director at Investing in Africa Mining Indaba, Laura Nicholson.
So naturally, the entire event for next year is centered around our theme. And what we really want to incentivize our industry to do at Mining Indaba is explore how they can stop working in silos and work together and be more collaborative, so to deliver sort of a more successful outcome in terms of exploration and development and new investments in Africa.
The UN Refugee Agency says it plans to cut its budget by nearly 20% to $8.5 billion, despite rising displacement from global crises like the war in Sudan. The revised budget falls short of its previous allocation for 2025, which stood at $10.2 billion. The reduction comes as the agency faces financial constraints and aligns with its revised spending plan. The agency says that the cutback highlights the global community's need to address both funding and humanitarian challenges. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,529 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.32 Kenya, 128 shilling, 495, and Zambia, 23 kwacha, 65. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you R5.42. Russia, 79 rubles 97. India, 88 rupees 14. China, 71.12. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 17 rand 62 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is $3,493 and platinum $1,416 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $68.42 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Okay. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Let's take a look at our G20 fact for the 2nd of September. Did you know that the timing of South Africa's presidency is especially significant as Africa's role within the G20 is rapidly expanding? For the first time, an African nation will hold the presidency, marking a significant milestone. Additionally, the formal addition of the AU as a permanent member of the G20 is a development that has the potential to carry substantial weight for the continent. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Africa Mining Indaba is looking ahead to 2026 with partnerships set to take center stage in shaping the continent's mining future. At a media briefing on Monday, industry leaders outlined the trends and strategies that could define Africa's mining growth. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange attended the session and filed this report.
The Africa mining industry is increasingly looking at collaboration as a way to accelerate development and unlock opportunities. Laura Nicholson, Product Director at Investing in Africa Mining in Durban, says stronger partnerships across governments, companies and communities are essential for success.
So naturally, the entire event for next year is centered around our theme, which is Stronger Together, Progress Through Partnerships. And what we really want to incentivize our industry to do at Mining in Durban is explore how they can stop working in silos and work together and be more collaborative, so to deliver sort of a more successful outcome in terms of exploration and development and new investment in Africa. And those partnerships need to range from government to government partnerships, both locally and internationally, better partnerships between mining companies and communities, partnerships between our downstream buyer community and the mining industry, and of course our investors.
Kwasi Mpofo, head of metals and mining at Bloomberg NEF, says Africa is on the global radar, with mining moving beyond commodities into matters of national security.
For once, Africa is hosting a G20, so the whole world is looking at Africa now, and there's no better time, I think, for Africa to elevate the sectors that underpins our economy. And so mining, obviously, looking into G20, you can see the South African presidency have elevated critical minerals as an important part of the conversation. So I think in terms of the trends, that will be number one. G20, the optimism around critical minerals playing a key role for Africa's growth. The second trend I'm obviously seeing is also the shift from mining becoming just commodities to becoming sort of underpinning national security.
He also highlights the impact of global energy and minerals transitions on Africa.
There are two transitions in the sense that, one, we're going to transition from fossil fuel-based power systems to renewable-based power system. And we've seen the global north adopt that quite quickly. Not necessarily even the global north. Like we've seen countries like Europe, regions like Europe, countries like the US and China adopt the energy transition very quickly. There is also going to be another transition, which I think will be the one that impact Africa in the near term, the minerals transition.
Laura Nicholson adds that Africa's mining sector can overcome challenges by focusing on collaboration and learning from what already works.
I think Africa's mining future is really bright, but there's so much hesitation around the challenges that Africa has. And every country has challenges, every continent has challenges. It's just how we work together to overcome those. I mean, getting a permit in the United States or Canada takes much longer than it does to get a permit in Africa. So let's focus on what we're doing right. Let's learn from each other in terms of what is already working, and that alone will expedite how others can adopt successful models to bring Africa's mining industry into the future right now.
With partnerships at the core, the industry is looking to build stronger, more collaborative outcomes across the continent's mining sector. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Palestine solidarity activists from across South Africa are preparing to embark on the Global Samud Flotilla, joining an international coalition representing more than 40 countries united in a mission of peaceful resistance to Israel's illegal blockade of Gaza. The Global Freedom Flotilla says the civilian fleet, which is the largest maritime effort since the siege began in 2007, carries a message that resonates deeply with the people of South Africa, who know from lived history that oppression can be resisted and that liberation will come when the world stands together. The South African delegation is made up of activists, health professionals, artists, journalists, and ordinary people who have chosen to act in solidarity with Palestinians living under siege. To talk to us further on this latest mission, we're joined now by the spokesperson for the South African delegation, Firoza Mayet. Firoza, thanks for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
I'm good, and thank you so much, Asanda, for giving us this opportunity.
Our pleasure, and thank you for making time to talk to us about such an important issue. Let's start with background then on the Global Samud Flotilla and the reason behind its formation.
Okay, so the global Sumo Flotilla is part of the Global March to Gaza and the Freedom Flotilla Coalition, which has over many years made attempts to break the medieval siege of Gaza via land, air, and sea. The global Sumud flotilla, and I think I have shared that the word Sumud comes from the very resilience, resistance of the Palestinian people who have fought this evil colonial power over 78 years. And this colonial power, the apartheid Israel, has attempted over 78 years to ethnically cleanse the indigenous people of Palestine. So together with the rest of the world, we have increased and intensified the solidarity with Palestinian people to fight colonialism, to fight apartheid, to fight racism. And as you mentioned in your introduction, for South Africa, this is really important. During our dark days of apartheid, our frontline states like Lesotho, Botswana, Angola, Tanzania, and other countries, and most importantly, Palestinians stood with us in this fight. It's our turn now to raise our voices, to break the silence against this evil genocide regime, and show the world that we cannot be silent any longer. And that is one of the main reasons for the global Sumo flotilla, which, as you mentioned, is beginning to sail in the course of the next few days.
So then let's unpack this latest mission the global Sumud flotilla is embarking on and which South Africa is a part of.
Yes. So South Africa, well, before that, most of the boats, so there are over 40 boats, they will be leaving from European shores. South Africa has insisted that we want to leave from an African shore. So we will be leaving on around the 4th. Some of the ships have already started sailing yesterday. They will be meeting in international waters after, say, around the 7th or so. As all the ships will meet together. They're all carrying much needed humanitarian aid, medical supplies. It's a peaceful convoy, and we're hoping that after the 8th, 9th, they will get to Gaza to send most of this aid that has been collected by civilian people across the world to get to Gaza.
What does this mission mean for South African activists and its people?
I think it's such an important moment right now, especially in the face of the ongoing genocide. We are witnessing the worst ever genocide recorded in history. There is famine declared by the UN, where most Gazans are starving. Many have already died. Most are children. There are drones. There are bombs. There is nowhere for people in Gaza to go. They are being corralled in small areas. It is a time where we see an impunity that defies international order. And this international order, which has kept many people kind of safe, is now being threatened, and it will impact not only us in South Africa, but majority of the third world countries where the stronger countries, the imperialist power, are able to defy international law. And therefore, it is so important for South Africa and every other country, every other state to come on board and join this call for support to fight Israel and its allies. In addition to that, this mission is totally aligned to the ICJ measures around humanitarian aid, calling on states to stand up and fight again and not enable this genocide any longer, to call out the illegal occupation. So for South Africa, it's very, very important that we increase our solidarity and intensify the work we're doing to stop this genocide, because it's not only important for Palestinians but important for the rest of humanity.
Absolutely. The mission is clearly receiving support. Could this be a positive sign that humanitarian aid will reach the people of Gaza? Famine has been declared there.
I think the hope is the most important thing, the thing that we all have. And without hope, we can't continue, as you know. So I think this mission is firstly bringing hope to the solidarity movement. It's bringing hope to Gaza to say you are not alone. It's bringing hope to all in the occupied territories who are under siege, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, in the Golan Heights, in many countries where there is so much violence. This is bringing hope that ordinary people can come together to fight the injustices committed by imperialist powers, specifically Israel, the United States of America, and Germany and other states.
Talk to us through logistics as part of the reaching Gaza side of things, because you've explained the traveling. How will it work in terms of how this humanitarian aid will be distributed?
So we have, firstly, the aid is going through all the boats. Once they get to the port, there is a team at the port of humanitarian aid workers, and together with them, there is logistics being put in place to make sure that the aid gets into Gaza, is being distributed by the people who already, by Gazans, who are part of humanitarian workers. And this is a hope we really have. We're praying every day that this humanitarian aid gets there. If it does get there, the siege can be broken, and we are hoping it will lead to opening the borders around Gaza, especially the Rafah border, where there are thousands of trucks waiting with humanitarian aid to get through. So the eyes on the siege is very important. We need all the countries, the states, to protect their own civilians who are going onto the boats. We have people from the UK, we have people from Barcelona, we have people from Brazil, we have people from many European countries, then obviously Africa. So if all our governments can be on board, ensure that there is the humanitarian corridor is protected as per the ICJ ruling, this humanitarian aid can get to Gaza.
Various missions before have tried to assist the people of Gaza, but they have not yielded the results that were favorable or needed. So what challenges could such a mission face, and how are you putting contingency measures to tackle those possible challenges for this mission?
Well, I mean, as we all know, that previously the Israeli Defense Force, its military forces have intercepted the missions, have attacked, even in the last mission, have attacked the activists who were on the flotilla. And this is all against international law. We are hoping that at this point in time, where we are, where the world is watching, that there will be protection for these activists. That is all we can do at this point in time. We're hoping that the fact that it's not one boat, but so many boats, so many activists, and we have raised the bar with all the governments, including our own government, who has said they will protect our citizens, that this will go through.
Feroza, thank you so much again for talking to us, and thank you for the work that you are doing. Please continue to do it, and we appreciate your time again as Channel Africa.
Thank you so much, and we really appreciate all the work that the media is doing to put attention to this mission and all our work that we have been doing. We hope that we can have many more interviews. We'll keep you in touch with what is happening on a daily basis with this particular mission. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you to all your listeners, and we'll continue the updates.
Our pleasure. Thank you for that. We'll be continuing to monitor this story with Feroza Mayet. She's South African, part of the South African delegation, that Global Sumud Flotilla, it's an international coalition representing more than 40 countries, and they're united in a mission of peaceful resistance to Israel's illegal blockade of Gaza. 7 o'clock Central African time it is. Good morning. If you've just joined us, thank you. If you stayed with us since 6, we get into the second hour of Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa, broadcasting from our Johannesburg studios in South Africa live. You can find us on www.channelafrica.co.za. On the SABC Plus app, we are there, and we are live streaming on our YouTube channel at Channel Africa 1 is our handle there. In this next hour, we'll be looking at jailed Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye, who's boycotted the start of his treason trial. This was yesterday. It was supposed to start on Monday. And Malawi's Electoral Commission saying it is advancing in its preparations for the 16th of September 2025 general elections. Those stories and more coming up in this hour. Let's start with our news update. Here's Nolutando Butelezi, and then following her is Fikile Lingwati with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective. SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning. I am Nolutando Butelezi. National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa has welcomed 2 life sentences handed down to a Mozambican national who abducted, raped and killed 6-year-old Amantle Samane in Johannesburg. Pete Simiao had confessed and pleaded guilty to the crimes. The little girl's body was found in Simiamo's shack in Soweto in October last year. Her mother testified about her ongoing trauma, sleepless nights and mental distress, particularly when hearing children cry. The defense argued that the guilty plea demonstrated remorse, but the state countered that it was motivated by self-interest rather than genuine contribution. Gauteng Province NPA regional spokesperson is Pindi Mjonondwane.
There is a difference between remorse and regret. And the accused was rather feeling sorry for himself rather than feeling guilt and sorry for the crimes that he has committed and how he has affected the family of the little girl. So we are happy with the sentence as the NPA.
Jailed Ugandan opposition figure Kizza Besigye has boycotted the start of his treason trial, accusing the presiding judge of bias. The trial of Besigye and Obed Lutale was supposed to start last month, after months of delays, but both defendants decided to boycott the proceedings after the judge, Emmanuel Baguma, refused to recuse him. Judiciary spokesperson James Eremie Mawanda said that there was no justification for the bias accusations and confirmed that Baguma had refused to recuse himself. Besigye's months-long detention has shown a spotlight on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights record ahead of polls early next year, in which Museveni is seeking re-election. A landslide that destroyed a village in western Sudan's Darfur region has left at least 1,000 people dead. The Sudan Liberation Movement Army announced that a village in the Mara Mountains had been entirely destroyed after days of rainfall. The country is in its grips of a catastrophic civil war between the Sudan Army and the Rapid Support Forces. As Sherwin Bryce Peace reports, the village destroyed was located near a hotspot of the war in the region.
The UN says Sudan has 30 million people in need of aid after a civil war destroyed a country once regarded as the breadbasket of the region. In addition, Mother Nature now unleashed on a village in the Mara Mountains where people had sought refuge from the raging conflict between Sudan's army and the Rapid Support Forces. The rebel Sudan Liberation Movement Army, which reportedly controls the area hit by the landslide, appealed to the United Nations and other international aid agencies to help recover the bodies of the victims. It's unclear what capacity Sudanese government authorities have to respond after years of war. Sherwin Riceby's SABC News, New York.
South Africa's Department of Social Development in the Northern Cape Province has embarked on a training program to educate officials to communicate with deaf people. The announcement was made during the official launch of the Deaf Awareness Month campaign in Kimberley. Head of the department, Shonice Kimiwuki, says that the program will be rolled out over the next 3 years.
The Department of Social Development, together with SASSA, has made a commitment to ensure that all our frontline workers, together with the parents of young children who are hearing impaired, will receive training. And this training will be phased over a period of 3 years to ensure that persons who are hearing impaired, that their stories can be heard. We have allocated resources to the rollout of sign language.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to hold a bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in Beijing today. With this week's events, China is sending a clear message as leaders opposed to the West will gather in Beijing. In a show of support for Jinping at a Second World War commemoration parade designed to show off China's military strength. The BBC's Stephen McDonnell reports.
Xi Jinping has already hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, and now the attention has shifted to the Chinese capital. This enables Xi Jinping to sort of show the multilateral view of the Chinese government. Of course, the contrast will be made with the United States under Donald Trump, whacking tariffs on other countries. And China would say, we're not doing that. You can trust us for stability and to be a reliable trading partner. But the optics of having all these leaders, especially leaders facing global sanctions, watching this massive military parade will be quite something.
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline: Bafana Bafana replaces injured Patrick Maswanganyi with Sipho Mbule. Naomi Osaka defeats Coco Gauff in US Open match. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
South Africa's Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malatsi, has warned that threats like disinformation, deep fakes, and AI manipulation are undermining democracy by polluting public discourse. Speaking at the the Media 20 or M20 Summit in Johannesburg on Monday, Malatsi underlined how media outlets worldwide are under severe financial strain, putting independent journalism and the democratic watchdog role it plays at risks. Malatsi called on governments and the private sector to work together to create sustainable, fair and innovation-driven business models to safeguard the future of credible media. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe filed this report.
The M20 Summit is being held on the sidelines of the G20 program in Johannesburg, South Africa,
organized by the South African National Editors Forum and Media Monitoring Africa as an independent media-focused initiative. Its core objective is to highlight the critical role of media and information integrity in supporting democratic governance, human rights, social cohesion, and the digital economy. The summit seeks to position media concerns firmly within the G20 agenda. Key focus areas include glossing media viability, trust, and credibility in an era of disinformation and AI manipulation, examining pressing topics such as artificial intelligence, copyright, environmental reporting, and online safety, particularly for children. Setting the scene was South Africa's Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Swali Malatsi, who warned that without trustworthy media, the foundations of democracy, accountability, and social cohesion are at risk.
Today, as we gather here at M20, the lessons continue that information integrity, as Boo said, matters for all of us. It is the invisible infrastructure of our democracy, the livelihood of successful economies, and the glue that strengthens social cohesion. And we dare not ignore this. Democracy rests on the power of the truth to prevail at all times. Citizens can only make sound decisions and hold leaders accountable when they are informed by facts and not falsehoods. Free and fair elections in particular depend on an electorate that is empowered to independently form opinions free from the abuse of propaganda. And when this information pollutes the public discourse, it undermines voters' ability to choose based on accurate information, posing a direct threat to the legitimacy of the democratic processes.
Across the globe, journalists are not just facing persecution from censorship and harassment to violence, but media outlets are simultaneously battling severe financial strain, threatening their very survival. Malatsi cautioned that without the economic foundation for independent journalism, there is a risk of losing the essential watchdogs that uphold truth and democracy.
Yet around the world, the very same media institutions we rely on to uphold the truth are under severe strain. In too many countries, journalists face censorship, harassment, and even violence. But even where overt repression is absent, news media are struggling to survive, and it is one of the biggest challenges that poses an existential crisis to the future of the sustainability of the media. According to the 2025 World Press Freedom Index, media outlets in 160 out of 180 countries report achieving financial sustainability with difficulty or not at all. The economic model that sustained independent news is collapsing in many places. And this poses a massive problem because when media outlets cannot sustain themselves, society loses its watchdogs.
He has called duty bearers and stakeholders to join hands in seeking solutions to the challenges faced by media.
And for those of us who have been given the responsibility as policymakers, we have a responsibility to work together with all the players in the sector to find solutions to the point that Spoo underscored regarding finding sustainable business models that will shape the future of our media landscape. So we must work together as governments and the private sector to support these sustainable models for independent media. This could include innovative funding mechanisms, fair competition policies, and ensuring that dominant tech platforms do not unfairly siphon away advertising revenues that journalism depends on.
The summit attracted both local and international journalists, including Paula Miraglia from Momentum Journalism and Tech Task Force in Brazil, who shared some insights on Brazil's media landscape.
Brazil has now an AI national strategy with a significant amount of funds dedicated to it. And I don't see journalism as part of this strategy. And I think this is something that we need to reflect on as also media people. I think that our industry, and now I'm speaking for my country, but I think that some of our countries share this context. When it comes to be described as an industry, it's a very small one. And it generates very little revenue in comparison to other industries. So it's not considered from that perspective. I think that we're good at stating our principles. We're good at stating how important journalism is to democracy. But because we're not so relevant from an economic perspective, sometimes we get neglected on some of the key discussions.
The Director for Media Monitoring Africa, William Bird, acknowledged that all media outlets around the world have all things in common.
All of us, or many of us around the world, are facing very similar kinds of challenges. We're all worried about media sustainability, journalism, public service content and public broadcasters. We're worried about online harms, a safe environment for journalists and for our young people. And of course, we're worried about making sure we've got access to credible information. So all of those issues are common. And so provides an opportunity for us to come together, build consensus and move forward.
The summit concludes this afternoon. Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's go to Uganda now, where jailed Ugandan opposition figure Kizza Besigye boycotted the start of his treason trial on Monday, accusing the presiding judge of bias. Besigye's months-long detention has shone the spotlight on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights record ahead of polls early next year, in which Museveni, who is 80 years old, is seeking re-election. For more on the story, Channel Africa's news correspondent Mike Arereng joins us on the line. Mike, how are you on this Tuesday?
I did send your picture to
Mike, good morning. Good morning, Mike. Are you there? I just heard you speak. I think you're speaking to our digital team members there. Mike, good morning.
Okay, let me try to find.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Just now.
Mike, hello. Good morning. Okay, let's take a break and we'll try and get a hold of Mike again, talking about Kizza Besigye, who is Uganda's opposition leader, and him boycotting the start of his treason trial, supposed to have started on Monday, and the accusations he's making there against the presiding judge. So we'll get an update on that from our correspondent in just a bit.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Okay, let's shift topics and go to Malawi now, where Malawi's Electoral Commission, MEC, says it is advancing in its preparations for the 16th of September 2025 general elections, where citizens will elect a president, members of parliament, councillors of their choice. It says ballot papers have started coming to the country in several consignments after landing at Kamuzu International Airport in Lilongwe. For more on this, we have our correspondent in Malawi, George Mango, joining us. George, how are you on this Tuesday?
I'm very fine. And how about you, that side?
Well, thank you so much. Let's get this update then. When did the first consignments of parliamentary ballot papers arrive in the country, and when is the last batch expected?
So the first consignment did arrive yesterday around 3:30 p.m. Central African time, as opposed to the actual time of 11:30 a.m. in the morning hours. There was a delay, which the Electoral Commission justified to say it had to do with the refueling system in Nairobi, Kenya. But otherwise, the consignment was well received. It's to do with 108 constituencies, something that leads to the next question, which you did ask to say as to when is the last consignment. So the last consignment, according to the electoral body, is on September 6th at equally the same time of 11 a.m.
Okay. The Malawi Electoral Commission has said the ballot papers will be kept at the airport at a warehouse under heavy guard. What has been the reaction to this?
There was, of course, some growing concerns from different political parties who were represented. Why? Because they feared that maybe there could be some other agents tampering with the ballot or these ballot papers or say materials. But otherwise, the assurance that came from the Electoral Commission was that a security guard will be guarding 24 hours. And the time that these ballot papers will be taken to different polling centers, they will also be checked by these political parties using the serial numbers that they also obtained yesterday. So it's going to be verified, and that is why they said there is no need to panic. And after all political party representatives did agree to what Mek was saying. So some divisions were there, but at the end of the day, all those divisions were sorted out.
Were political parties able to witness the actual arrival of the ballot papers, and will the same thing happen when they are dispatched?
Yes, according to the program itself and according to procedures of handling Electoral Commission's activities, political parties were allowed and they were invited well in advance to say they have to send their representatives or their monitors so that they witness the arrival. They have to check the serial numbers, whether the ballot papers or materials were in tandem with what was, procured in United Arab Emirates. And the same activity is going to also happen when they'll be distributing these materials to different constituencies or polling centers. So it's a 50-50 situation, which definitely the Electoral Commission and political parties from the government side, from the opposition side, have agreed and did agree, even using the multi-party democracy, an organization that handles all political parties here in Malawi.
How would you describe the general mood ahead of these elections in the country?
Each and every person who was registered, we're talking about 7.2 million people, is eager and very eagerly waiting to seeing 16 September come so that they vote. And they are looking at issues of, reduced voter apathy because political parties are also taking their side, campaigning, telling people that they need to vote. So each and every person looks for a change, be it in government, be it those in opposition. Each and everybody looks for change. Government side, those who are in support of the incumbent President Chakwera, they still want to continue governing for their own reasons. Just like those in opposition, they would like, to oust the incumbent president from government. They have their reasons. And of course, these reasons have been stipulated well in their political party manifestos, which are still being circulated through different political rallies across the country.
All right, so those rallies are continuing and political parties are still campaigning.
Yes, political parties, political presidential hopefuls, members of parliament, those who are aspiring ward councillors are busy campaigning on the ground because the deadline for them to stop campaigning will be on 14 September as per electoral rules, that 2 days before the polling, the voting day, each and every person needs to stop, campaigning. So all political party presidential candidates. We're talking about former President Peter Mutharika is busy campaigning up and down. Joyce Banda, the former president, also is busy campaigning up and down. Incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera, busy up and down. Even the vice president of the incumbent president, Michael Usi, is also campaigning for his party, to govern this country. So it's a busy Malawi as we're talking, but there are topical issues which are dominating from the public domain and which people would like them to be rectified come 16 September.
What are those issues?
One of the major issues is that of forex shortage. How is the coming government going to deal with the forex shortage? Number two is an issue of food security. How are they going to ensure that Malawians do eat food, who have nsima on their table? The other issue is about job creation, because many people do graduate, they don't get jobs. And above all, which is very contentious, is the rise or skyrocketing prices of various commodities like fertilizer, because the fertilizer has just shot up by 50, if not 100%. Just like a bag of maize has shot up by 100%. A price of sugar, bread, water, electricity, all these kind of things. So these are the tangible things that maybe the opposition are capitalizing on in their manifesto. So when they come back, they have to revamp the forex issue, the economy issue, the agriculture sector, the labor issue, and the health aspect, even the education aspect, in view of the U.S. donor withdrawal.
Let's leave it there, George. Thanks so much for your update. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Correspondent in Malawi for Channel Africa there, George Mhango. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's go back to the story then in Uganda, where jailed Ugandan opposition figure Kizza Besigye boycotted the start of his treason trial on Monday, accusing the presiding judge of bias. Besigye's months-long detention has shone the spotlight on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights record ahead of polls early next year, in which Museveni, who's 80 years old, is seeking re-election. Mike Arering joining us now, Channel Africa News correspondent, for more on this story. Mike, good morning.
A very good morning to you.
Thanks for chatting to us. Let's go back a bit and look at why Besigye and Lutale are on trial.
Well, they are being accused of trying to topple President Yoweri Museveni's government. The High Court in Kampala has adjourned the hearing proceeding against retired Colonel Dr. Kizza Besigye, his aide Haji Obedi Lutale, and Uganda Army Captain Dennis Ola after they failed actually to appear in court citing health complications. They were supposed to be taken to court yesterday, but they never appeared. The hearing of this case was scheduled to begin on Monday before Justice Emmanuel Baguma, the deputy head of the civil division, but was halted when prison authorities presented handwritten letters from the Villa Upper Prison authored by Dr. Kizza Besigye and Lutale. Under Uganda laws, an accused person cannot be tried in absentia, except under specific legal provisions.
Besigye has accused the judge of bias, and given the reputation of the country on its failing human rights, is that hard to believe that the judge would have bias?
Yes, the judge has been accused because Dr. Kizza Besigye was arrested last year around October. And according to the laws of Uganda, someone is supposed to be released after 6 months. And he has been more than 6 months in the court. But when he was arrested, he was taken first of all to the military tribunal. Then the High Court in Uganda came and said, no, this Besigye should be taken to a civilian court. Now, this judge has been counting the days when he was shifted from the military court and taken, military tribunal and taken to the civilian court. So this amounts to say that he had not yet reached the 6th month. That is why Judge Emmanuel Bumsile refused to grant bail to Dr. Kiza and his aide.
The the preceding judge has refused to recuse himself. Their attorney, Aaron Kiza, has told Reuters, Besigye and Lutade's attorney. When was the submission made calling for the recusal of the judge, and is there a probability of him being recused?
Well, the defense lawyers actually of Dr. Kiza Besigye are the ones who say that the judge is biased. And Dr. Kiza Besigye himself said he will boycott all the hearings which are conducted by Judge Emmanuel. So Judge Emmanuel, on his part, he said he was doing the right job, so he cannot actually quit. Otherwise, the defense lawyer of Dr. Kiza Besigye, including Master Karua, a prominent Kenyan lawyer, they are saying that the judge is biased and he's a political cadre of the ruling party of the National Resistance Movement. So they say they want another judge, not that judge.
All right, let's leave it there, Mike. Thanks again for your time and update.
Thank you, too.
Thanks, Mike. Arering is Channel Africa's correspondent in Uganda. Let's say good morning to Nolutando Buthelezi. She has our news headlines. It's 7:30 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
The National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa has welcomed 2 life sentences handed down to a Mozambican national who abducted, raped and killed 6-year-old Amantle Samani in Johannesburg. The rebel group Sudan's Liberation Movement says an entire village has been engulfed following massive landslide, and its entire population of more than 1,000 are feared dead. And then survivors of a devastating earthquake in eastern Afghanistan has spent the night in an open as rescue efforts continue. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports now as we say good morning to Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Let's start off with football news. Bafana coach Hugo Broos has called up Orlando Pirates midfielder Sipho Mbule as replacement for the injured Patrick Maswanganyi for back-to-back 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Nigeria. All the players called to the squad, including Mbule, have reported for camp except Germany-based Ime Ocon, and the team had its first training session at Dobsonville Stadium on Monday afternoon. The team will have 2 more training sessions today and Wednesday before leaving for Bloemfontein, where it will play Lesotho in the first qualifier on Friday. Broos says Mbule has qualities they are looking for in a player who will take the role Maswanganyi was earmarked for, with Themba Zwane not having featured for Bafana since he was injured.
We can't take that risk. His replacement is Sipho Mbule. Why Sipho Mbule? I think everybody agrees that he's a player with much qualities. And I have to agree also that the past years we didn't really see what we expected from a player like that. But he's an experienced player, and he's a player, one of those players who can play on that position.
And Tim Sugazi, president of South African Football Club TS Galaxy, has urged other PSL clubs to put effort into establishing women's teams. Sugazi's TX Galaxy Queens and Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies, the 2 teams at the top of the Hollywood Bet Super League table, are the only 2 affiliated to clubs in the men's professional league. CAF introduced a new regulation 3 seasons ago, which requires all clubs participating in the inter-club competitions to have an active women's team in their league sanctioned by their respective football associations. Sugazi says many of the clubs have found a way around the rules and don't necessarily adhere to them.
Obviously, I think clubs have found a way to circumvent the rules, those CAF rules, for sure, no doubt about it. Look at who's playing in CAF, year in, year out. Do they have women's teams clubs? No. The answer is no. But do they qualify? How do they pass the CAF licensing? You know, you end up having a TUT Matantanza. What's that? You need a Super Sport United. If they play in CAF, they must have a Super Sport United. I'm making an example, you know, women's team, not a TUT Matantanza. This is not a box ticking exercise. So that needs to change. So CAF have to relook into these rules that are being circumvented in one way or another.
And the 8th edition of the Lagos International Badminton Classic came to a thrilling close at the Okoya Thomas Indoor Hall, Teslim Balogun Stadium, as Indonesia emerged the undisputed star of the tournament. Indonesia swept the podium across multiple categories in a final day packed with drama, passion, and top-class shuttle action. And finally, tennis news. The Japanese star Naomi Osaka delivered a statement win at the US Open by thrashing home favorite Coco Gauff in the last 16. Osaka powered past third seed Gauff 6-3, 6-2 in a highly anticipated but lopsided fourth-round showdown of former US Open champions on the Labor Day holiday in New York. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Let's find out now what's happening in the world of economics with Tabiso Lihuku. Good morning.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. Angola's planned 30,000 barrel per day Cabinda oil refinery will begin producing fuel by the end of the year. The project will be Angola's second oil refinery and will help make sub-Saharan Africa's number 2 crude producer less dependent on costly fuel imports amid government efforts to eliminate fuel subsidies that have triggered deadly protests. GEMCOP, a London-based emerging markets investment firm, is the largest shareholder in the plant and previously said the first phase will supply 5 to 10% of the country's fuel needs. One of the World Bank's senior managing directors says degraded land, polluted air and water stress pose a direct global economic threat, but using natural resources more efficiently could cut pollution by half. Axel van Trotsenberg says that the damage is particularly acute for low-income countries, most at a threat from poverty, climate change and biodiversity loss. Speaking alongside the publication of a new report of Van Trotsenberg says around 80% of people in low-income nations were exposed to all 3, and the bank was committed to responding even as many countries cut aid budgets. There are growing fears what would happen if South Africa lost access to the global SWIFT payment system. SWIFT is the backbone of international trade. It allows South African banks to move money across borders. Losing access would choke off capital flows, trigger the rand collapse, and drive up the cost of living. Chief Investment Officer at Benguela Global Fund, Zwelakhe Mnguni, it says while the risk is low, the consequences would be catastrophic.
The rand would depreciate severely. It would trigger sharp depreciation, and there'll be a lot of volatility. And then that would blow inflation out as well. And that would force interest rate hikes. The South African rand would probably go easily above 20, if not more. I think the financial services industry would fall apart, to be quite honest. So the banking industry does a lot of cross-border transactions. So that would actually create big problems for the banks.
The South African Department of Mineral and Energy Resources has announced decreases in fuel prices, including a cut of as much as 57 South African cents a litre for diesel. The department says that the petrol price will decline by 4 cents a litre and eliminating paraffin by 49 cents. Robert Make is the department's spokesperson.
The reasons are as follows: the lower oil prices during the period under review, the rand appreciated slightly on average against the US dollar during the same period.
The US dollar has made a limp recovery in early Asian trade after days of selling, ahead of the US markets reopening after the Labor Day holiday. The dollar index was lost up 0.1% at 97.709, having touched the slowest on Monday since the 28th of July, after 5 consecutive days of loss as investors sought alternative havens such as gold, where prices traded just shy of record levels. Traders have sold the greenback as U.S. President Donald Trump's attacks on the Federal Reserve, including his decision to remove Governor Lisa Cook, raise a fear that the White House is undermining the central bank's independence at a time when the case to begin cutting interest rates is far from clear. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,529 naira. In Botswana, it's at 13.29. Kenya, 128 shillings, 328. In Zambia, it's at 23.55. The BRICS countries. I'll start here in South Africa. The dollar here in South Africa is trading at 17 rand 60 cents. In China, it's at 7 yuan 13. India, 88 rupees 11. Russia, 80 rubles 242. And in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 rand 43. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold is trading at $3,493 and platinum is at $1,416 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $68.42 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Angola's long-awaited Cabinda oil refinery is set to start production by the end of the year. The 30,000 barrel per day facility, the first refinery built since independence, is expected to reduce the country's reliance on costly fuel imports. Officials say the project comes at a critical time as the government moves to phase out fuel subsidies, a process that has already sparked deadly protests. Our business reporter Innocent Samosa is in Luanda attending the oil and gas conference, who joins us now to tell us more. Innocent, how are you this morning? Thank you for making time.
Bon dia, Asanda. See now my Portuguese is coming all right.
Yes,
Good
okay.
morning, colleague.
Great. What are officials saying there, Innocent, about how the new Cabinda refinery will impact fuel prices and availability for ordinary Angolans?
Yeah, so colleague, this will be the first refinery built since independence, and the country got independence around 1975. And of course, the leaders here, they believe the Cabinda refinery will, will boost the local production to reduce imports on a fuel. But of course, we do know, colleague, that this project, the initial capacity of this project is around 30,000 barrels per day. And of course, it's set to supply between 5% to 10% of Angola's national fuel demand. And of course, they are of a view that this move is expected to significantly reduce reliance on costly imported fuel. The imports currently account for about 72% of domestic fuel consumption. But also at the center of this, Asanda, is that the issues around improving fuel availability. The project will enhance, of course, national fuel security. The officials emphasizing that locally produced fuel will also stabilize supply and make it more, reliable for Angolans. But also the issues around subsidy and supporting subsidy reforms, and this is some of the issues that the Minister of Oil and Gas, the Minister of Petroleum here, has indicated earlier. But of course, Angola, you would know that it faces out the subsidies, fuel subsidies, a shift that Asanda has, triggered protests in the country. This refinery, of course, many of them believe that it's seen as a strategic build block for ensuring affordable fuel during this transition. But of course, on the flight this morning, in fact, we arrived this morning around 2 a.m. Asanda because of flight delays, and we checked in around 2 o'clock in this hotel, and I had a chat with the African Energy Chamber Executive Chairperson, that is NJ Ayuk, who will be part of the speakers there. In fact, I wanted to adject him to do this interview this morning, but he was just too tired to, wake up. But he said that this refinery he says that is a step in the right direction, not only for Angola, but for the region as a whole. So it does seem as though is getting a bit of, green light from many leaders who will be participating in this oil and gas conference, Asanda.
So what does it actually mean for the region generally?
Yeah, so you would know, Asanda, that Angola, despite being sub-Saharan Africa's second largest oil producer, um, as I've indicated, the challenge is that they import most of its refined petroleum products, and this means that the Cabinda refinery will allow Angola to basically meet part of its own fuel demand locally and ease the pressure on regional fuel supply chain, and this will be contributing to the region as a whole, but also stabilizing fuel prices across borders because at times fuel can be expensive. By reducing this reliance, Asanda, on expensive imports, in my view, Angola could help stabilize fuel prices domestically, which in turn will reduce, a volatility in cross-border fuel trade, and also, in neighboring countries in the Southern Africa region. But the issues also around support for infrastructure and industrial growth, that's also an important aspect of what we're talking about here now, because the local refining capacity, Asanda, you and I know that it strengthens a country's industrial base, which could really contribute to a broader Southern Africa region energy security by issues around diversifying sources of refined fuel within the region. So in a way, it's seen as a step in the right direction to really, revitalize the sector in the region. Asanda.
So tomorrow you'll be attending this oil and gas conference. Are we likely to see investment or partnerships being announced at the conference that could further transform Angola's oil and gas sector?
Yeah, indeed, Asanda. So what we're hearing on the ground is that several international independent energy companies, such as Panoro Energy, the Recon Africa, the Sanita Energy, these are big companies in the continent, in the world, for that matter. So they confirmed to attend this particular, oil and gas conference, and also this, in a way, it's signaling, keen interest, Asanda, in upstream exploration and production opportunities in this country. But the issues also around, licensing rounds and attracting upstream framework. So in a way, it does seem as though this year's conference has really attracted a lot of people who are interested in the issues around industry dialogues and deal reforms. This, you would recall that the last one had been designed as a high impact, deal making platform, featuring the big companies and investor briefings, and also the dedicated deal rooms, So it does seem as though this one will be a little bit bigger than the previous one. But again, Asanda, what we wish as journalists is that this should not be another talk shop. They should sit down and get resolutions that are with timelines that are not empty, because Africa cannot wait any longer. We need to get our refineries. We need to get Africa moving. I mean, you and I know, Asanda, we're endowed with mineral resources, but the challenge is that we've got challenges of legislation in the continent, where companies are not willing to invest in the continent simply because of these bureaucratic rules, So Africa cannot wait any longer. It's time for them to really build this better Africa. Particularly, this is one of the biggest sector that contributes massively to Africa's GDP growth. So it does seem as though it's big, but again, we don't want it just to be a talk shop. They should come up with timelines that are not empty, that are, with substance, so that they can move the continent further. Asanda.
And on that point, then, what do you think should comprise of Angola's long-term energy strategy, especially with the global push towards renewable energy? You touched on timelines that need to be clarified and stuck to.
Yeah, so I'm glad, Asanda, we're talking about this, because the issues around legislation is really a challenge. But if you also take it to up there in East West Africa, your likes of Dangote, they've been having challenges with the issues around regulation. It's only now that Dangote's refinery is up and running, but it took time, not even time, years, for him to basically be allowed to operate because of these back and forth with legislation and government and all of that. So it does waste time in a way. So now going back to your question, you would recall that we spoke about the Cabinda project, which is of course a step in the right direction. In a way, this is a project that is showing momentum, not only for Angola, of course, but for the region as a whole. But this is a major project that is either, developed, because we know in your intro, as you indicated, Asanda, that it's going to take place later this year, meaning that there could be some of the things that might hinder this project from continuing. So it's later this year. We know that the year is almost done. So therefore, the pressure is on for them to basically come up with the solutions that are, should I say, the promises, for a lack of a better term, to continue making sure that we diversify the natural gas, and issues around shifting focus on upstream natural gas development and oil production, filters. So these are some of the things that they need to make sure that they're up and running, because it will be very embarrassing for them to say that this will come up later this year, and then come November or December, we're still talking about getting the Cabinda refinery project up and running. It will be very much embarrassing and disappointing, for a lack of a better term. But our hopes is that they'll make sure that this project is up and running later this year, so that really the region can massively benefit from this project.
What else are you looking forward to there, Innocent, in terms of this oil and gas conference? I know right now you probably want to rest a bit, but what else are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so me and JP, the Portuguese reporter, we agreed that today we'll go to the ground and just ask people on the ground if they know about this conference and what is it that they want to see out of this project and out of this conference, rather. Because yes, big people are meeting, but the ordinary person on the ground, these are the people that these leaders are advocating for. We want to hear from them firsthand. What is it that they want on the ground? What type of Africa they want to see moving forward? Because we cannot have this engagement, Asanda, and the ordinary man on the street is not been taken into consideration. So we want to do that. We'll be really packaging today to really get voxes on the ground to hear what people want out of this conference. But I'm very much excited, Asanda, and yeah, again, I'm excited. I'm told that the fish here is very nice, so I can't wait to taste it.
I've heard that as well. Okay, well, enjoy and do keep us updated there in Luanda in terms of what's happening. Thanks for checking in.
Thank you so much, colleague. Thank you.
That's our business reporter there, Innocent Samosa, speaking to us from Luanda in Angola, where the oil and gas conference will be taking place. It starts tomorrow.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Accused number 4 in the murder case of South African football star Senzo Meyiwa is expected to find out this morning if charges against him will be dropped. Mthokoziseni Mapisa and 4 other men are accused of shooting and killing the country's national team Bafana Bafana goalkeeper and captain in 2014. Pearl Makubane filed this report.
After the state wrapped up its case, it was time for the defense to call witnesses in an attempt to dispel allegations that the men on trial are responsible for the death of Meyiwa. However, the defense informed the court that they wanted to bring the Section 174 application to have charges against the accused dismissed. 4 of the accused have since abandoned the process, leaving accused former Mapisa believing he has no charges to answer to. Defense counsel Zitulele Nxumalo says there's no evidence linking Mapisa to the murder of Senzo Meyiwa. Advocate Nxumalo says the state relied on evidence from one witness, Constable Sizwe Zungu, who claims to have seen all 5 accused at a hostel in Vosloorus the same evening Meyiwa was murdered, and that no other witness was called to corroborate the allegations.
According to the version of the state, the only witness who met and placed the accused at Vosloorus hostel on the 26th of October 2014 was Constable Zungu, Constable Sizwe Zungu, who was a single witness. It is straight law that a court should approach the evidence of a single witness with caution. The evidence of Zungu was not corroborated in all material respects.
Advocate Nxumalo says there is no evidence that places Mapisa at the crime scene, nor sufficient evidence to suggest that he had any part in the planned assassination, with the soccer star's former girlfriend Kelly Khumalo as the alleged mastermind.
The bulk of the evidence of Zungu refers to hearsay evidence in the sense that no witnesses were called before this court, despite him. Zungu's evidence, it must be noted, my lord, that it does not detail a plan by the accused to execute the assassination of the deceased. It does not place the accused together, or even himself, Zungu, that he overheard such a plan. Zungu's evidence does not reveal any prior agreement amongst the accused, including accused number 4, to kill the deceased. There is absolutely no evidence, my lord, that accused number 4 was present at the scene of crime where the violence was being perpetrated, either circumstantial or direct.
However, State Prosecutor George Baloyi insists there's evidence that corroborate Constable Zungu's testimony. Advocate Baloyi says some events that transpired before and after the murder can also be picked up in the alleged confession statement by accused number 2, Bongani Ntanzi. Baloyi told the court that the strength of Ntanzi's confession led to the arrest of accused 3, 4, and 5 in the matter.
Accused number 2 mentions in his confessions that he was with accused number 1, 3, 4, and 5 during the incident. Accused 3, 4, and 5 were arrested on the strength of the confessions of accused number 2. Accused number 3's cell phone records place him in the reception area of Foslores Tower, which services the nearby Basotho Hostel on 26 October 2014, which is corroborated by Zungu's evidence. Accused 3, 4, and 5 concede that they were together on the 26th of October 2014.
A ruling on the discharge application is expected to be heard Tuesday morning. Paul Makubane, SABC News.
All right, it's 8 o'clock Central African time, and we enter the third and final hour of Rise and Shine here on Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda, and in this hour we'll be looking at humanitarian organizations in Sudan and their updates in terms of the situation in the city of Al Fasher, and that's in Sudan's North Darfur. Situation is dire there as far as humanitarian aid is concerned, and issues of malnutrition around children or amongst children. We'll be finding out about that, speaking to Dr. Charles Nyoikonge, who is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst. That story and more coming up. Let's get our news update first, though. Here is Noluthando Buthelezi with that, and then following her will be a snippet of what's happening in the world of sports, as Figile Lingwati will give us headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The high-profile case of jailed Ugandan opposition leader Kizza Besigye has intensified scrutiny on President Yoweri Museveni's human rights practices as he prepares to seek another term in office. 80-year-old Besigye boycotted the start of his treason trial in Kampala, accusing the presiding judge of bias. He was abducted in Kenya last year and forcibly returned to Uganda. He now faces supporters insist are trumped up charges which carry a possible death penalty. His defense lawyer says that he does not believe that he'll get a fair trial. Channel Africa's correspondent in Uganda, Mike Arareng, explains.
Besigye's team believes that, Judge Emmanuel Bakuma should not be part of this process because that is his constitutional right to be released on bail. And we are going to see a very unique development on this because elections are now coming up in Uganda, and the current president, Yoweri Museveni, who is 80-year-old, is seeking another re-election. Of course, people believe that, this could be a strategy to ensure that he wins smoothly.
National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa has welcomed the 2 life sentences handed down to a Mozambican national who abducted, raped and killed 6-year-old Amantle Samane in Johannesburg. Pete Simiao has confessed and pleaded guilty to the crimes. The little girl's body was found in Simiao's shack in Soweto, October last year. Her mother testified about her ongoing trauma, sleepless nights and mental distress, particularly when hearing children cry. The defense argued that the guilty plea demonstrated remorse, but the state countered that it was motivated by self-interest rather than genuine contrition. Gauteng Province NPA Regional Spokesperson Pindi Mjonondwane.
There is a difference between remorse and regret, and the accused was rather feeling sorry for himself rather than feeling guilt and sorry for the crimes that he has committed and how he has affected the family of the little girl. So we are happy with the sentence as the NPA.
South Africa's Department of Social Development in the Northern Cape province has embarked on a training program to educate officials to communicate with deaf people. The announcement was made during the official launch of the Deaf Awareness Month campaign in Kimberley. Head of the department, Shanice Kimi Wuki, says that the program will be rolled out over the next 3 years.
The Department of Social Development, together with SASSA, has made a commitment to ensure that all our frontline workers, together with the parents of young children who are hearing impaired, will receive training. And this training will be phased over a period of 3 years to ensure that persons who are hearing impaired, that their stories can be heard. We have allocated resources to the rollout of sign language.
Somalia's capital city, Mogadishu, is undergoing a cleanup campaign led by Banadir Region Mayor Hassan Mohammed Hussein. The initiative aims to reclaim the city's former beauty and civic pride, which has been damaged by decades of conflict. The campaign has grown rapidly, with 300 cleaners added to meet growing demands and plans to employ an additional 50 workers. The ultimate goal is to have 600 salaried, well-trained cleaners, including a health team and supervisors. Local governments are supporting the efforts to ensure efficient cleaning to restore public confidence in the city nicknamed Little Roma, and aims to improve urban life and to rebuild trust in local governance. Survivors of a devastating earthquake in the eastern Afghanistan have spent a night in the open as rescue efforts continue. The Taliban authorities say that more than 800 people have been killed and thousands injured when a magnitude 6 earthquake hit the region. Dozens of helicopters have been used to lift the injured out of the remote mountainous area which was worst affected. A local doctor called Rafi Yuala said that people in the area are desperate for help.
Afghans are burying the dead themselves and carrying the injured to hospitals. I'm sure there are people still alive under the rubble. Some have died while trapped, waiting for rescue workers. It happened late last night when people were home and asleep. That's why hundreds were killed, and the death toll will rise. We need tents, we need medicine. It's hard to reach villages in remote areas in the mountains. Some helicopters have made it, taking injured people to hospitals in Kabul, but time is running out.
For any news stories that you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Noluthando Buthelezi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Now, sports headline, Rassie Erasmus highlights desperation ahead of Springboks visits All Blacks clash. Algerian Olympic champion boxer challenges gender test at CAS. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Humanitarian organizations in Sudan say the situation in the city of Al Fasher in Sudan's North Darfur remains dire. It is reported that at least 600,000 people, almost half of them children, have been displaced from Al Fasher. Close to 300,000 are still trapped, cut from aid and food. And this morning we discuss further the developments coming from Sudan as the humanitarian situation worsens amid the ongoing war. And we speak to also this morning we wake up to the news that a landslide has killed at least 1,000 people in the remote Mara Mountains in western Sudan. So we speak to Dr. Charles Nyuikonge, who is Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst on this. Dr. Nyuikonge, thank you for making time for us. How are you this morning?
Thank you so much, Asanda. I'm doing well, and good morning to your listeners.
Let's start with you painting a picture for us of the exact situation in the city of Al Fasher. How dire is it?
The city of Al Fasher is dire, and the landslide which has just occurred in the Tarasin village, or particularly around the Mara Mountain, it's not just a natural disaster. It's a disaster which only comes to amplify the catastrophic impact of the Sudan's war, which largely leaves the country reeling from some of the pre-existing challenges, whether it is the drop in the potential for human survival in the country, where individuals live on an average of $750, which is about $15,000 per annum. You have about 12 million internally displaced. About 180,000 people have died so far since 2023 because of the conflict, and you have about 4 million further refugees. So the landslide makes the situation not just worse in Al Fasher, but in Tarasin village.
Which groups are mostly affected by all of this, not just the landslide, but the entire war in Sudan?
The entire war in Sudan is actually a proxy war, which is fought internally by both state and non-state actors. And if I may, I would say the internal actors largely are the Sudanese army that is supported on the one hand by the Sudanese Liberation Force. Then you have the Janjaweed and the RSF on the other hand. Then you have powers that have aligned themselves. The Sudanese army supported by Egypt, Turkey, Iran, and Qatar. And General Dagalo of the RSF is supported by UAE and Libya to some extent. So to the extent that it is so, Sudan is really in a very messy security landscape at the moment, which the landslide only worsens the situation.
We also know of a drone strike by the Sudanese army on a medical clinic in South Darfur, which left 12 people killed on Saturday. How much of an effect will this have on what's happening in the north side of the country?
In the north side of the country, it will have two different types of effects. On the one hand, we have to look at the human and the economic impact of that, is that it deepens the pre-existent emergency. It worsens access to already areas where it is not easy to reach. It increases psychosocial support because now the trauma from those who felt that they were safe in certain areas, they realize that the safety is just illusory. And on the other hand, it places pressure on local resilience. And if we have to look at the other hand, where maybe we have to reflect on the peace, security challenges or the impact on peace and security, it becomes a further distraction from the conflict resolution efforts by those who are involved in that. And then the humanitarian aid and the battlefield has now widened again, further displacing more people than I have just mentioned, and this undermines peace efforts.
In terms of the ordinary Sudanese and what they're saying, have you had a chance to go through these stories that they're telling and just find out from them in terms of how they're struggling and the examples they give of their realities?
The examples the Sudanese give of their realities is that the external community speaks about them, but that they are actually the ones who are living the situation, and that the situation is perhaps dire than we actually think. Some Sudanese, especially the civil society organizations, they believe that the situation in the country is largely because Omar al-Bashir is still at large and that he's living within the country and controlling things to the point of causing instability in the country, and that if he was not in the country, perhaps the country would have come together to stabilize. Others think that the country has only destabilized because Omar al-Bashir was actually overthrown, and that him being there, he was holding the country together. To the extent that all of this is so, the Sudanese need some kind of national dialogue.
Figures on Al-Fasher have put those killed there at least 19 people. Do we know if this number could rise, and how many are injured?
Yes, definitely the number could rise, and if we have to even shift just slightly beyond Al-Fasher, and we look at just the victims of the landslide which you mentioned earlier on, the landslide has claimed about 1,000 lives, and I think that report suggests that there's only one survivor. And the call for humanitarian assistance to come in is further impeded by the fact that the area is inaccessible.
Do we know who is behind the bombings that have taken place in the country lately? Observers have said that the rapid support forces have stepped up their assaults in recent weeks.
Yes, after the rapid support forces lost control of Khartoum in March of this year, they have stepped up their assault in the east of the country, where Al-Burhan, the current interim leader, has established the headquarters of the country, or the headquarters of his leadership. So they've stepped up attacks, drone attacks in particular, in the east part of the country. And Al-Burhan has actually said these drone attacks will not be possible without the support of the UAE.
The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, Commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo was sworn in on Sunday as the head of a parallel government in Sudan. What do you make of this?
This only complicates the social cohesion project of Sudan, that after the split of Sudan, we thought Northern Sudan would be together, and now the swelling in of Dagalo only creates a situation where one starts wondering whether the solution of the Sudan is to further split Sudan. To the extent that is so, and whether this is going to stand the test of time, is a matter to be seen.
What of the cholera outbreak in the country? The first case on that was detected in June this year, with 20 deaths reported. What is being done on this front, and how much of an impact is this having?
Already the medical facilities in the country are overstretched. The humanitarian assistance which the country direly needs cannot access certain regions of the country. The earthquakes or the natural disasters that the country is experiencing only go to worsen the situation, because now there's not just a shortage of food, there's also a shortage of water. So whatever people can find anywhere as a form of liquid, they want to consume. And this only goes to deepen the impact of the cholera, and the risk is that this could spread to other parts of the country. So the country is really in dire need of humanitarian support from anywhere. And I dare say, South Africa has accompanied this country for so long, but now South Africa seems silent.
The United Nations, they've said they haven't been silent on this. They've said Al-Fasher is experiencing acute malnutrition among children there. What will it take to unblock aid delivery for the region and for the necessary nutrition services to reach people?
The country needs sustained ceasefire agreement, and the country needs an end to the war. I think an end to the war, and a situation which perhaps we cannot envisage now, where Al-Burhan and Dagalo can work together, would be really good for the country, and with them cooperating to give humanitarian access to the communities which are most in need of it, would be a good way for the country to keep conflict behind and to start uniting to rebuild its infrastructure.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for a ceasefire in the city. He called for that on Friday. Is this call likely to have any impact, and in what ways would it, if it did?
To the extent that the call for ceasefire is done remotely and that conversations are not had with the exact protagonist, or efforts to bring the protagonist to the table have been stalled, this call is largely going to fall on deaf ear, because at the moment, the different protagonists are busy consolidating power so that they can maintain their wealth, control their autonomy, and protect their lives.
What about shelters in the country? How are they managing, and what type of support are they able to give at this stage?
The shelters are largely self-sustained, and the people largely move to the areas where they think that they can be safe. Like I mentioned earlier, the Tarasan village where the earthquake has occurred has been largely under the control of the Sudanese Liberation Army, and this control was seen by many Sudanese as a safe area. Now that the earthquake has happened, it just creates a lot more chaos in the country. So it's hard to imagine that anywhere in Sudan at the moment is safe, or that humanitarian access can even reach the country. Perhaps if the ceasefire happened, humanitarian access could get into the country or to hard to reach regions through the air.
So even at that stage then, when humanitarian access reaches the country, the fact that it's been blocked is a violation of human rights, of children's rights. So what do you foresee then as being the consequence for those responsible for blocking aid after the fact?
I think that those who are blocking the aid are fully aware of the fact that their war strategy goes against the Geneva Convention. I think that they are aware of the fact that talks of genocide are real. I think they are aware of the fact that they are violating human rights law. And so the list of those who could be enlisted for international warrants would only grow.
We know with conflict, there are things like violence and rape reported. What is the situation on that front looking like at the moment in Sudan?
The situation has largely gone unabated. And at the moment, the approaches for the tools for conflict resolution that have been tested seem to be largely ineffective. I note, and I've mentioned this before, that the African Union has actually been largely out of breath, in part because the belligerents themselves have not invited the African Union to be a part of this. They rather prefer to go to the east, to the Middle East, to get their conflict resolved. And to the extent that is so, I believe that some kind of involvement by the region, whether by IGAD or by the African Union, could bring new breath to the conflict situation in the country.
We've touched on health and the situation on that front and how it's been affected, but what about education? We know reports of education facilities also having been under attack. What do things look like on that?
As far as education is concerned, people are managing to homeschool, and only in areas that have largely not been touched, that especially in the Tarasan village, where some people who had run there for refuge could actually effectively go to school. But to the extent that the Tarasan village has been touched, Al-Fasha is in itself in shambles, that it is hard to imagine what future the children of Sudan would have.
Doctor, thank you so much for giving us an update on the story. Of course, it's one that we'll continue to monitor. Things are dire. I don't even know, where to from here in terms of the hope. But I guess we hold on to some type of hope that at least aid will be allowed into the areas where it's mostly needed, especially being children who are really, really affected in a negative impact. Dr. Nyoikonge, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Asanda, for having me.
That's Dr. Charles Nyoikonge, Africa Peace and Conflict Analyst, talking to us about the situation and the latest there in Sudan's North Darfur, the city of Al-Fasha. Situation remaining dire as far as humanitarian aid is concerned, and then exacerbating that, a landslide which has been recently reported there, which has killed at least 1,000 people in the remote Mara Mountains, and that's in the western part of Sudan. All areas of Sudan being affected by this ongoing war.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege.
So when you think of African music, you think of kwasa kwasa, high life music from West Africa, Afrobeat from West Africa, of gospel music or faith music or spiritual music. But when we think of reggae music, we go to the Caribbean, and if it's Africa, we only think about Lucky Dube. Well, I'm here to introduce you to some reggae music from Africa. Salif Keita with Dakan Faye from Mali. And I must say, this one was a real shock for me because I never had imagined Salif Keita on a reggae beat. But listening to him, it just proved to me how versatile he is as an artist because you'd be expecting him to be on that vibe of West Africa, of ballads. But he really proved that he is very versatile, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Africa in Song with Chanduko Ligege. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
There's growing concerns about South Africa being disconnected from the SWIFT global payment system following the country's tensions with the United States. Even though the likelihood of this happening is seen as a low risk, experts warn the economic consequences would be catastrophic if it were to happen. SWIFT is the backbone of international trade, allowing South African banks to move money across borders. Experts say losing access would choke off capital flows, trigger the rand collapse, and drive up the cost of living. Dimakazo Leshuru filed this report.
A United States proposed legislation known as the U.S.-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act of 2025, introduced by Republican Ronnie Jackson, would require a comprehensive review of the U.S. and South Africa relationship. The bill, which is still in the legislative process, is not just symbolic. Not only does it criticize South Africa's foreign policy, its relationships with China, Russia, and Iran, and its stance on Hamas and the International Court of Justice case against Israel, as well as identify South African government and ANC officials who might be subject to sanctions. There's also growing concern that it might be used to cut off South Africa from the Global Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications SWIFT system. South Africa's Godongwana has reportedly expressed concern about this at a close meeting with the country's banks this past week. While some analysts say South Africa's strategic position in Africa makes exclusion from SWIFT unlikely, they believe Washington could still use the threat as leverage. Zolake Mguni, a chief investment officer at Benguela Global Fund, explains.
The rand would depreciate severely. It would trigger sharp depreciation, and there'll be a lot of volatility. As you can imagine, there's a lot of transactions that happen offline. So it's not exchange of hard money. It's exchange of money through the banking system. So if you exclude South Africa from the SWIFT, it would mean that there'll be scarcity for the online currency. South Africa gets about 400 billion in annual flows from trade. So it would complicate that, and the rand would blow out, and then that would blow inflation out as well. And that would force interest rate hikes. So it would be a very bad scenario.
But if the worst were to happen, the fallout would be brutal. The banking sector would also be shaken to the core, he says.
I think the financial services industry would fall apart, to be quite honest. So the banking industry does a lot of cross-border transactions, and they rely on the liquidity that they get from the cross-border trades. So they have forex departments that trade currencies, and that goes through the SWIFT system. So that would actually create big problems for the banks. It would also mean that there'll be a lot of liquidity internally. That would be a shortage of liquidity. So
Viv Govender, wealth specialist at Rand Swiss, says the U.S. may be overplaying its hand. He says this would present an opportunity for alternatives.
The U.S. may be overplaying its hand. Yes, they have built up a network globally that relies on the U.S. as the key stone of their, or the foundation stone, or cornerstone of their global financial system. But this is not something that cannot be replaced with time. What would be required is enough of an incentive for the big players out there, the Europeans, the Chinese, and whoever else, the Indians, and so on, to basically decide that the inconvenience and the difficulty involved in basically creating a system that's an alternative to the US system would be viable, and for other participants in the marketplace to basically think that there is a need for this.
And for South Africa's already fragile credit rating, the outlook will darken further. Governor says while it is not justified for Donald Trump's government to act in this regard, it could do it.
This is a function of Donald Trump's, which was, I would say, mind or madness, or whatever you're going to phrase it as. He could easily push something like this through against South Africa. We are not a large enough player in the world for this to be a huge deal to the US. It's not justified in any means. It all comes down to whether he wants to do something like this or not, and he's willing to basically incur the mild amount of annoyance and difficulty of doing it. But if he wanted to, it could be done.
Makwe Masilela from Makwe Fund Managers says the impact will not only be limited to the South African economy or companies alone.
Unfortunately, it's going to affect most companies, as we know that we've got lots of rent hedges, that is companies that are earning most of their revenues in outside the country. So yes, that will definitely have a negative impact, and also start discouraging people to see South Africa as an investment destination.
This comes as China is carefully projecting itself as a responsible global power and an alternative to Western dominance. The world's second largest economy is now presenting itself to lead not only as an economic giant, but also as a diplomatic bridge builder in an increasingly divided world. And countries like South Africa could look towards Beijing to provide solutions. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimagazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And now it's 8:30 Central African Time, and we say good morning for our news headlines with Nolutando Butelezi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Humanitarian organization in Sudan says that the situation in the city of Al-Fasher in Sudan's North Darfur remains dire. The National Prosecuting Authority in South Africa has welcomed the 2 life sentences handed down to a Mozambican national who abducted, raped, and killed 6-year-old Amantle Samane in Johannesburg. And an armored train carrying the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has crossed the Chinese border on its way to Beijing. I'll have the details at the top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And now let's check in with the world of sports. Here's Fikile Lingwati with the details.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
First up is rugby news this hour. South Africa are about to undertake their toughest assignment since the Rugby World Cup final in Paris in 2023, when they prepare for the New Zealand side at Eden Park on Saturday in round 3 of the Rugby Championship. The Springboks will welcome scrum half Faf de Klerk into the camp and are hopeful that Huga Bongimbonambi, who is away on family duty, may still rejoin the squad later in the week. Coach Rassie Erasmus also heaped praise on the women's national side, who qualified for the quarterfinals of the Women's Rugby World Cup for the first time in their history.
I actually got up 3 o'clock last night to watch it. It was awesome to watch, and congratulations to everybody in that environment. Also SA Rugby for what they're doing well. Our Springbok women, and first time we've reached the quarterfinals. I know it's probably going to be New Zealand or France now in the quarterfinals, so that's pretty tough. But so first of all, congratulations, and it has inspired us.
The Rugby Championship is wide open, with all teams sitting on a win and a loss. And Erasmus believes that heightens the tension and the stakes ahead of the Eden Park test.
It's a nervy week for both teams. The there's pressure in both camps. Some people will say we are struggling to find a bit of rhythm. Internally, we think we're getting there. They just came from a loss. So both of us is 1 from 2 in the last 2 matches. So no, it's a massive game. But it's difficult to say it's the biggest game since the World Cup final. Of course, we've lost a few. So, but a massive game.
Bafana coach Hugo Bros has called up Orlando Pirates midfielder Sipho Mbule as a replacement for the injured Patrick Maswanganye for a back-to-back 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Lesotho and Nigeria. Bruce says Mbule has qualities they are looking for in a player who will take the role Maswanganye was earmarked for, with Themba Zwane not having featured for Bafana since he was injured.
We can't take that risk. This replacement is Sipho Mbule. Why Sipho Mbule? I think everybody agrees that he's a player with much qualities, and I have to agree also that the past years we didn't really see what we expected from a player like that. But he's an experienced player, and he's a player, one of those players who can play on that position.
On to boxing news. The Algerian boxer Imani Khalif, at the center of a row at the 2024 Paris Olympics, has turned to sports top court to attempt to overturn the introduction of a gender test. The Court of Arbitration for Sport said in a statement that Khalif was challenging the Global Boxing Federation's decision that disallows the athletes' participation in upcoming world boxing events without a preliminary genetic test. Khalif was one of the 2 boxers who sparked a gender eligibility furor at the Paris Games last year. The other was Taiwanese fighter Lin Yu-ting, who has been entered to compete at the World Championships that start this week in Liverpool in England. We end with badminton. The 8th edition of the Lagos International Badminton Classic came to a thrilling close at the Okoya Thomas Indoor Hall, Teslim Balogun Stadium, as Indonesia emerged the undisputed star of the tournament. Indonesia swept the podium across multiple categories in a final day packed with drama, passion, and top-class shuttle action. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Zochitika ndimadaphiri kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Mabhizinesi osiyana-siyana mdziko la South Africa ayamba kukhoma msonkho wa 30% akamagulitsa katundu wawo ku dziko la United States of America. Ndipo panotele ndikatswiri wa zachuma mu dziko la Malawi Dr. Betha Chikadza. Boma la South Africa masiku apitawo linanena kuti ngati America akani kutsitsa msonkho, bomalo lipeza misika ina. Mungatifotokozere kuti ndizotheka South Africa kupeza misika yomwe ingabweretsa ndalama pafupifupi $15 billion zomwe imapezeka ku nsika ya ku America.
Tinene kuti izizi zitha kuchitika koma sizingachitike mwa pompopompo chifukwa tikaonetsetsa izizi zokuti inali nsika wa dziko la America noni nsika wakukhazikika umene dziko la South Africa linali likuzolowera kale. Tsono kuti tingonena kuti dziko la South Africa lipezanso nsika mwina mwasangasanga kuti lizitumiza katundu wake mwina zisizingachitike facho kuti tikunena papa $15 billion ndi ndalama zambiri ndithu.
Zochitika ndimadaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Let's check in with the world of business as we say good morning to Tabiso Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. The National Union of Mine Workers of South Africa has expressed shock over looming job cuts of over 3,000 employees at Glencore and Simanco mines. NUM is calling on Glencore and Samanco to negotiate constructively. This follows Glencore's confirmation that it has triggered a Section 189 retrenchment process under the Labour Relations Act effective from the 1st of September. The move impacts Boschuk and Wanderkop smelters in Rustenburg, Roven Vanadium near Betani, and the carbon division in Emalahleni. NUM chief negotiator Lefty Mashego has slammed the retrenchment plans as premature, disingenuous and deeply concerning for workers.
We are sitting at the highest peak of unemployment in South Africa. We are talking around about 3,000. It's a lot of sections. As a result, we are talking about 3,000 employees to be affected by this thing.
Angola's long-awaited Cabinda oil refinery is set to start production by the end of the year. The 30,000 barrel per day facility, the first refinery built since independence, is expected to reduce the country's reliance on costly fuel imports. Officials say the project comes at a critical time as the government moves to phase out fuel subsidies, and a process that has already sparked deadly protests. Innocent Simosa has more.
This will be the first refinery built since independence, and the country got independence around 1975. And of course, the leaders here, they believe that the Cabinda refinery will boost the local production to reduce imports on fuel.
Nigeria has signed a production sharing contract with the Total Energies and local firm South Atlantic Petroleum for 2 offshore blocks. This in an effort to boost exploration and attract investment under its new oil framework. Nigeria is seeking to revitalize its upstream sector amid global energy transition pressures and declining investment in fossil fuels. The deal covers petroleum prospecting licenses 2000 and 2001, awarded during the 2024 licensing round, and spans about 2,000 square kilometers in the Niger Delta Basin. One of the World Bank's senior managing directors says that degraded land, polluted air and water stress pose a direct global economic threat, but using natural resources more efficiently could cut pollution by half. Axel van Transenberg says that the damage is particularly acute for low-income countries most at threat from poverty, climate change and biodiversity loss. Speaking alongside the publication of a new report, Van Trotzenberg said around 80% of people in low-income nations were exposed to all three, and the World Bank was committed to responding even as many countries cut aid budgets. Oil prices rose as concerns about supply disruptions grew amid escalation of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Brent crude added 40 US cents or 0.59% to $68.55 a barrel, while US West Texas Intermediate crude was at $65.6 a barrel, up $1.5 or 1.64%. Investors now await a meeting among members of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and their allies on the 7th of September for any clues on further output hikes from the group. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,529 naira. Botswana 13.29, Kenya 128 shilling 328, and Zambia 23 kwacha 55. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar will cost you 5 ruble 43, Russia 80 rubles 242, India 88 rupees 11, China 71 13, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 17 rand 60 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Gold $3,493 and platinum $1,416 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $68.42 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, Thabiso Lohoko.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Annie Kalonji sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons à présent dérouler notre tapis rouge pour accueillir notre personnalité du jour, l'artiste chanteur Sheky Frey, qui est en ligne de Guinée avec nous.
Je suis un artiste guinéen, un créateur, un styliste, et je fais un peu ce qui plaît à mes fans. Voilà, c'est un peu ça. On a beaucoup de genres de trucs à faire, mais bon, pour le moment, on est basé un peu sur le rap.
D'accord. À quelle période de votre vie avez-vous commencé à vous intéresser à la musique, Sheky?
Bon, je ne crois pas qu'il y ait une période, parce que moi, je suis un mélomane depuis mon petit âge.
Annie Kalonji, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
The Pan South African Language Board, Pan SALB, has called for sign language to be taught in schools. This to break communication barriers and ensure inclusivity. Pan SALB officially launched the Deaf Awareness Month campaign under the theme No Human Rights Without Sign Language Rights in Kimberley. The 5-day South African Sign Language or SASL training program for parents, families and teachers of deaf children enters its second day today. Debuchom Simanga filed this report.
In July 2023, recognized as an official language in South Africa, Pan South African Language Board, PanSALB, is holding workshops with the intention to address critical communication barriers and to promote inclusion, early language acquisition, and the overall well-being of deaf children. PanSALB Language Executive Head Julius Dantile says people who are hearing impaired should be recognized.
And that's why we emphasize an African philosophy where you see the person first before you can see anything. So we need to re-establish that philosophy where you don't describe a person on the basis of the structure or the physicality, or the ability that they have to do something.
The Department of Social Development in Northern Cape has made funds available to roll out a training program to educate their officials on how to communicate with deaf people. The program will be rolled out over the period of 3 years, says the department head, Shounes Kimiwuki.
The Department of Social Development, together with SASA, has made a commitment to ensure that all our frontline workers, together with the parents of young children who are hearing impaired, will receive training. And this training will be phased over a period of 3 years.
A member of Northern Cape Provincial Language Committee, Dr. Moto Osilekhoe, says the government should have a budget to promote languages.
In most cases, things in South Africa are being developed in English. And when they have to be done in African languages or in sign languages, then a budget issue comes up to say that there cannot be so much money for so many languages and all that. But remember, I also applauded the government for recognizing 12 official languages.
Different stakeholders, including the South African Police Service and the Department of Social Development, signed a pledge to cement their commitment of ensuring that the rights of deaf people are recognized. I am Debuchom Simanga in Kimberley.
Gender-based violence is destroying lives and tearing communities apart. It happens in homes, in schools, at workplaces, and too often in silence. But it doesn't have to continue. If you see it, speak out. If you are hurting, reach out. Because doing nothing is not an option. Listen to all 19 SABC radio stations from Wednesday 23rd of July for hard talk, discussions, advice, dramas, educational shows, and interviews around GPV with experts, survivors, lawmakers, and the whole country affected by gender-based violence. For all your favorite SABC radio stations, call 0800 428 428 to report abuse or get help. GPV, it ends with you. This message is brought to you by the SABC. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
On Rise and Shine on Tuesdays, we shine the spotlight on gender-based violence after the economics news. So let's get into that section of the show now. While gender-based violence, or GBV, is largely experienced as violence against heterosexual or cisgender women, it can affect all people, including LGBTQIAQ plus people. To unpack the experiences of GBV within the LGBTQI plus community, the complexities, the stigma, we now speak to medical doctor, queer mental wellness advocate, and an award-winning social entrepreneur, Dr. Dulci Rakumakwe, CEO of Quad Care Healthcare Services. Dr. Rakumakwe, thank you for joining us. How are you this Tuesday?
Thank you so much for having me, Asanda. I'm blessed and happy to be here.
Thank you. We are blessed to have your community joining us and also talking about this particular community, rather. In Africa, what are the key factors? Let's start here, Doctor, that influence levels of GBV or gender-based violence within the intersection of gender identities that fall under the LGBTQI plus peoples.
All right. So number one, it's criminalization. So in many parts of Africa, it is still not seen as, it is seen as criminal, to be a member of the LGBTI community. Some people even getting killed with police impunity, because it is not law. The police, can look away while people do like anything that they want to do. We also have gender norms, in Africa that everyone is meant or is supposed to be abiding by, patriarchy. There's religious fundamentalism as well. A lot of people are rejected by their families or even pushed into forced marriages. There's economics involved, economic marginalization, with housing insecurity in a lot of instances. And there's poor legal protection, and leading to stigma that's happening, especially in health services, in schools, and in workplaces. So the factors are really multiple, and they're all contributing to these high levels of GBV, against the LGBTIQ plus people in Africa.
What are the major type of GBV cases that get reported amongst this group?
Okay, number one, corrective rape. Corrective rape is a big one, especially against lesbian women, and it happens even in South Africa. It does happen where we say we have a constitution that protects people who are sex and gender diverse. This still happens. Sexual assault is a big one. There's intimate partner violence, also within the community. So queer couples, there's violence that happens there, and it's very difficult for people to go and report these, because of the discrimination they face in law enforcement services. There's family abuse that happens with some people, kicked out of their homes, hate crimes, street violence that happens against trans, intersex people, and also gay men. There's police harassment that happens, especially when people are found, in after hours and without other members of the community seeing you still get people who are harassed by the police. And there's also then finally workplace discrimination that happens and often linked to violence as well.
How important is the language used to describe the relationship between what is assigned at birth and one's personal sense of gender when it comes to better understanding the LGBTQI plus community and in thus then tackling the issue of gender-based violence they experience?
Okay, language is important. Language is crucial. It shows respect. If you think, as an example, a woman that is married would be offended if they are not called Mrs., for instance, and when language is properly used, we reduce stigma, we are able to guide service provision, and we improve on justice responses when we use the right language to describe people. And using the correct pronouns, for instance, it builds trust. People can develop trust for the system. And when there's misgendering that happens, there's high risk and of violence that happens, of discrimination that happens. And there's also high risk of underreporting of situations where people are violated.
Does the system of assigning gender at birth on medical terms prove problematic for intersex individuals later on in life, in, say, adolescence, for example? And how can that be resolved?
Okay, so like the biggest problem, with assigning gender, to intersex people when they are born is, number one, there's non-consensual surgeries that happen. Parents decide what gender or what sex they want the child to be, and surgery is then done on this child. Now the child grows up also with incorrect documentation. They're exposed to stigma. Then they're later exposed to mental and even physical harm. And how we fix this? Number one, we defer these non-urgent surgeries, so that we can allow people to give informed consent for any procedures, done on their bodies. And we should also start having a legal recognition of that intersex status, and start working with our Home Affairs, to make sure that the document updates and changes process is as seamless as it can be. Currently, people wait for even up to 2 years to get correct documentation from Home Affairs, and this affects their chances of maybe getting gainful employment. This affects their chances of opening bank accounts. Something as simple as opening a bank account is difficult for someone who does not have proper documentation. So a lot of work still needs to be done in making sure that as a country, and also as the continent, we have proper legal recognition of the intersex status.
Do gender constructs and categories change over time and across cultures? And how should this be attributed to how we formulate strategies for dealing with gender-based violence?
Okay, gender is culturally dynamic, and we need to have strategies that are locally grounded, that are historically aware, and co-designed with communities. When communities are educated and taught of what does being sex and gender diverse mean, communities are able to sit down together and just co-create systems or come up with strategies that speak to those communities, and we just avoid a one-size-fits-all approach. We are diverse and different as people in the different parts of the continent, and we need to recognize those diversities when we come up with strategies to make sure that everyone feels safe in our communities.
What are some of the civil society groups that focus on support and interventions for victims and survivors of gender-based violence within the LGBTQI plus community? Let's talk on regional level as well as international level.
Okay, so on regional level, we have, ILGA, International Lesbian and Gay Association. We have the Coalition of African Lesbians, which is called CAL. In South Africa, we also have FEW, Forum for the Empowerment of Women in South Africa. We have the Strategic Litigation in Africa, IRANTI, that looks at especially at the transgender and the intersex people, gender dynamics as well. Triangle Project. We have Access Chapter 2. So we have many of these organizations that exist in South Africa, and in Nigeria, there's the Initiative for Equal Rights. And in Uganda, you have the HRAPF. In Zimbabwe, you have the Queer Alliance. And we have human rights awareness groups that exist as well in Kenya and Tanzania. And on the international front, we have the Outright International. We have Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Rainbow Railroad, Frontline Defenders, Red Umbrella Fund. And these organizations, all of them exist to create a world that is safe for the sex and gender diverse people.
Doctor, thank you so much again for your time. We appreciate your insights and educating us on an important matter.
Thank you so much for having me, Asanda. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you. Dr. Dulci Rakumakwe is CEO of Quad Care Healthcare Services, talking to us about gender-based violence within the LGBTQI plus community. And coming up after Rise and Shine on Channel Africa is On the Move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palisa Tau. Benjamin joining us now to tell us what to expect today.
Hey,
it's Tuesday, the
where's
2nd
Peter? He
of...
ran away from the challenge. The
Yeah,
September
like I ran away yesterday.
Sugar-free September. That guy. I don't trust him. Do you trust him?
I do. I think you guys, both of you, will make it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to be speaking about something very interesting as we start the show today. Imagine if you had 48 hours in a day. What would you do with your day, Asanda? How would you maximize
I feel like 24
that?
hours is enough, guys. You're going to get extra tired. Because the thing is, when you have those many hours, you're going to want to fill them with something, right?
But the thing is, with the 24 hours, do you think that you are doing the best that you can with those hours? I actually don't think so. I think so. We underutilize the hours that we have in a day. We act busy, right? And we pretend that we are efficient in whatever we're doing. But are we maximizing our lives each and every day? So philosophically, yes, you could say 48 hours is too long. But is the 24 hours used in a maximum way where our human potential is actually exhausted in a positive way? Do you think so?
I think so.
We're doing enough.
I think we are doing enough, and I think the older you get, the more you prioritize what's important, and then you plan your days better. But then also, when you're younger, do you really need to be thinking about maximizing on the time you have in a day? You should be chilling at those ages.
Asanda.
You should be relaxed.
Asanda, you are a free spirit. I can just sense good. Asanda is one of those, like, you know what? I just go with the flow type of girl.
But it's better to go with the flow, don't you think?
Hey, these days we have to make sure that we're out there making things happen, don't you think?
Yeah, you can make things happen, but also go with the flow as you make things happen.
Okay, we'll see. That's what we're going to be talking about, trying to create that balance, but also fulfilling our potential and making sure that every single day we're utilizing it to the best and that we're not wasting our lives, because I think we've been given this opportunity, which is life, to make sure that we become the best that we can be.
Awesome.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get Channel Africa on DST Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
And that's how we come to the end of this Tuesday, the 2nd of September's edition of Rise and Shine. We'll do this again tomorrow, 6 till 9, bright and early in the morning. And of course, stay tuned to Channel Africa for more programming on the move coming up next. From me, Asanda Beda, and the team, it's goodbye from now.